of Living Word Ministries.
Father God, we thank you for another opportunity to come together, for this community to come together, to come to some resolution to different opportunities in the community. Father God, I pray that you give us guidance, give us wisdom, God, that we might go forth as one, not a divided community, but a united community. Father, resolving situations and problems. God, that we might go forth with your wisdom, that we might listen to one another. God, that we might be stronger together, that we might know that we're stronger together. Father, I pray that you guide our officials, that you provide them the wisdom, knowledge, and insight that they need to make the decisions that need to be made. And that you might provide the community the wisdom, insight, and patience that's needed so that we might all work together to accomplish something as one. In the name of your Son, Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. If you'll face the flag and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Ms. Sagehorn, would you please call the roll?
Board Member Granger.
Present.
Board Member Street.
Here.
Board Member Halligus.
Here.
Board Member Lucas.
Present.
Chairman Rowan.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Board members, you have the minutes from the October 15th of 2024. We would entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Any discussion from the board? Ms. Sagehorn, call the roll, please.
Board Member Granger.
Yes.
Board Member Street.
Yes.
Board Member Halligus.
Yes.
Board Member Lucas.
Yes.
Chairman Rowan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 5 is additions, deletions, and modifications. Staff does have one, but before that, I will ask if any of the board members have any additions, deletions, or modifications they would like to make.
I will be having to leave early this evening to go to a community meeting. If we could move discussion 11 up further on the agenda since it affects the St. Andrew CRA, and then the presentation on the TIF rebate program as well to the beginning.
Well, you stole mine, Board Member Street, but well, I'm happy to. So just to clarify and expand on what Mr. Street was saying, so we want to talk about items number 9 and 11. We want to move those up in the agenda to immediately follow audience participation. So I think, Mr. Street, if you would consider, sir, let's make number 11 would become number 7. I think that will be a quicker item than number 9, and then number 9 could become number 8. So, and then starting at number 7 as printed would be number 9 and continuing. So again, discussion and consideration from the Historic St. Andrews community would be number 7, immediately following audience participation. And then immediately following by discussion and consideration of the potential policy revision to the approved TIF rebate would follow that. And then we'd get back into the correct order of the agenda as mentioned. Is that correct, Mr. Street?
Yes, I'll make that motion. That's the motion.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussion from the board?
Yes, what time is leaving early?
About 5:50.
5:50. Thank you. Just curious because I might leave at 6:30.
Hopefully we're done by 6:30,
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman.
so.
Hopefully we're done by 5:50.
Yeah. All right, is there any discussion on the motion to move items number 11 and number 9 further up in the agenda following audience participation? All right, Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger.
Yes.
Board Member Street.
Yes.
Board Member Halligus.
Yes.
Board Member Lucas.
Yes.
Chairman Rowan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you all. All right, item number 6 is audience participation, open to any issue related to CRA authority. Your remarks are limited to 3 minutes. We have a timer up here to your left from the audience. If you'd like to make a public comment, please come up to the podium. We'll need to get your name and address for the record.
Hello, Patty Sunday, 1115 Fairland. I had mentioned this to Jonathan, the executive director, just hoping that you might consider adding 2 board members like you do on your tourism board, maybe that aren't elected officials. I see it in other markets where I work, and it seems to be pretty healthy. Second thing is on the $50,000 grant for Mr. Sauls. I hope I'm saying his name right. I have kind of an ignorance question. Does Mr. Sauls own that land? I didn't see land acquisition costs. And so I didn't understand if he was building it for someone else, the triplex, I think it's a he, or he owns the land and he already had that as an asset, and then those were his construction costs plus the 50,000 incentive. And there's no scandal. I'm just curious how it works. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunday, and that's item number 7, so we'll discuss that when we get to it. But it's now item number 9. Yes, ma'am.
Michelle Bryant, 409 East 9th Street. I have a couple of questions here. I sent an email back out in regards to the item that's on the agenda today, in regards to moving Harper dollars to upgrade the A.D. Harris facility. And my questions were in the email to the Commissioner of Ward 2 and the City Manager was, will these updates that you're looking to make have any impact on A.D. Harris becoming, or preventing A.D. Harris to becoming an historical preserved location? And what modifications are looking to be made? And has the process began for A.D. Harris to be considered and or deemed a historical preserved location? My second question is, I know I came before this commission or this board before in regards to the potential lease between the City of Panama City and the Rosenwald School, the Bay County School District. I'm not sure if there's been an update or any research that has been gathered. I'm not sure if it's particularly a CRA issue, but this is where that process had begun. The next question is, with there no longer being a CRA director, does that place any emphasis on creating a safe space for a CRA advisory board to be reestablished? Especially considering the years that will be lost with waiting to get a new CRA director, when there will cause time for lack of improvement and initiatives that could be created, especially in a ward such as Ward 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Any other comments, public record, or public input?
If we have questions, like about the TIF program, do we speak now or?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Brenda Lewis Williams, 1007 North Center Avenue, Panama City 32401. I strenuously and vigorously object to the consideration of approval of allocating available Glenwood HRP grant funds for improvement to the A.D. Harris facility. Some maybe, but not all of them. This grant, from what I understand, is supposedly for improvement within the community. That is a limited improvement. As I rode around today, I saw buildings in disrepair, I saw lots overgrown, I saw garbage all over the place, not being picked up. It appears to me, similar to what Commissioner Granger said about the water in his ward, it appears to me that I used to say benign neglect, but it's not benign neglect, it's abject neglect taking place in Glenwood. It is probably an exercise in futility because gentrification has already taken place, and that's where it is. But the use of these funds for one specific entity is totally out of order in my observation. The Commissioner of Ward 2, in a meeting with Jared, Tony Bostic, Michelle Bryant, and myself, promised us that she was going to do everything she possibly could do to maintain the historicalness of A.D. Harris. I do not see that taking place. I think that's an insult to the Black community, given that that was the first Black elementary school in Glenwood, not the first Black elementary school in Bay County. The first Black elementary school in Bay County is in Lynn Haven. But I find that to be an insult to the community. I find that to be an insult to the folks who fought to have that school. I find that to be an insult of the teachers who are lying in that grave over there on Lisenby Avenue. And we need to preserve this as an historical site. Additionally, I would like the information on when the contract was signed with with Rebuild Bay to be in there. I'm making a public record request on that. I have made a public record request on all of CRA's activities and contracts signed, the beginning and end date from 2018 to present. And I would like that information. This is a public record request for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis Williams.
Maria Williams, Downtown Improvement Board. I just had a question about the TIF rebate and my concern of St. Andrews and Historical Downtown having an investment of $1 million in order to qualify for the program. I understand those two areas are very desirable. So I understand the reasoning behind it initially, but I just want, at least, I'm not familiar with St. Andrews and their availability, but for downtown, we have very little property available down here. But we have a lot of vacant property, buildings that need renovated. And I think $1 million may be a little much to encourage them to do it, but certainly 500,000 would make a difference. Just something to consider.
Thank you, ma'am.
Tim Whaler, 3213 Goldenrod Court. I would just ask tonight that on the TIF incentive program, we get some clarity on the timeline going forward as to when the application window may be open for that program. So make sure that gets addressed in the when it's discussed, if we could.
Thank you, Mr. Whaler. Yep.
Catherine Shores, 1914 DeWitt Street. I just wanted to second what Mrs. Williams was speaking of. This grant money was intended to boost businesses, not our city itself, the city. So if there is leftover grant money, I think that money needs to go back into the businesses in some sort of way. So I think Ms. Williams was spot on with that comment she made.
Thank you, Ms. Shores. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, public comment segment is closed. I believe all of these items will be addressed tonight except for two particular items. And board, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the request for the board to consider adding 2 board members that are not elected officials, very similar to the way that other boards function. And then also potentially reestablishing the advisory board specifically for the CRA board. So I don't know if there's any desire to discuss or address that from our board members.
I would like to weigh in on that. I think it's a great idea to bring 2 people that aren't elected officials onto the board. I think it would give us some insight and it would open our eyes to things that we don't see. So I would certainly be in favor of that. I would ask Ms. Shore. She said something about she agreed with Ms. Williams. I think we had 2 Ms. Williams talk. So I was wondering which Miss Williams you were talking about.
That is a great question, Mr. Zimmerman. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let the record show that Ms. Short agreed with both Ms. Williams. Yeah. All right. Good question, Mr. Mayor. So. All right. I mean, if there's a desire, staff can work with our legal team and with the staff to, bring back what other folks have done if there's a desire for the board to do that.
The only thing I would add is, if we're going to open it up to that, there may need to be looking at representation for each one of the CRAs as well. And so there's more than 2. So how do you select which one is getting representation if it's just 2? So.
That's a good point.
So I mean, I'm fine with you guys coming back with some kind of thoughts. So.
Okay. I think it'd be appropriate for that to be a motion and a recorded vote to give staff clear direction, just to make sure we're following the will of this board. Is there a motion?
Sure. I would like to make a motion that we ask the staff to investigate the possibility of adding some non-elected officials to this board, whether it be 2 or 4. I guess it doesn't matter. If we want one from every ward, that's 4 would be okay. So I would like to make a motion that we ask the staff to investigate adding some non-elected officials, and they can work on selecting the number to this board.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion from the board? Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger,
No.
Board Member Street,
Yes.
Board Member Halligus,
Yes.
Board Member Lucas,
Yes.
Chairman Rowan.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sagehorn. And then the other thing was an advisory board being appointed, but, I think if we look at adding 4 additional members, I think that would probably solve a lot of the same, concerns. So I don't know if the board would want us to do both or just
I
kind of
would like
combine
to
the
see
two.
both. I would
Okay.
like to see both.
All right. I think we can just look at what others have done, since there does seem to be a desire to do that, and we'll present that information at the January meeting to this body.
Did you say you wanted to do both?
Or just
Look at both.
Okay.
I mean, I don't see
couldn't
why
quite
you would
understand
do.
exactly what you said.
I don't see why you would do both, but it might be an either or that we look at.
Yeah, we can present background on both at the January meeting. As a reminder, we're not having a December one.
So do we need to make a motion to?
I think just to, again, make sure that we're following the direction of the majority of this board, I think a motion would be appropriate. Mr. Chairman? To also include.
Yeah,
Could you
I'll,
take us-
I'll motion to also look at an advisory committee.
And I'll second that.
All right, is there any discussion from the board?
Yes, I'd just like to say historically, there had been at one time the advisory boards in each of the 4 wards. And the two, in each of the 4 CRA areas. And the 2 CRA areas that have been the most advanced still have active organizations, the Downtown Improvement Board for downtown, the Historic St. Andrew Waterfront Partnership for St. Andrews. And I think that citizen engagement on an ongoing basis with a formal relationship to the CRA has propelled what we've seen in those areas. And so for that reason, I support looking at having advisory boards again in those areas that they do not have them.
To follow up with what she's saying is, I don't know what the issue is. I don't think coming in just saying we need an advisory board is going to work, because at least in my experience, it kind of starts out strong and then you don't have a lot of people come and then it doesn't get, and like you said, especially in those 2 areas. So I don't know if there's a unique, different way of doing an advisory board, and, I don't know. It just something maybe than just the standard advisory board, because like the Waterfront Partnership, they put a lot of work into that. The DIB puts a lot of work into that. Even then we struggle with some attendance with that. So, but yeah. So if there's another way to, I don't know. I just think there's got to be something different than just a standard advisory board, because it hadn't worked well at least in Millville.
And so I would, again, that's a reason to look into what we can do, and also to engage the citizenry in looking into that as well. Because both of those organizations, the DIB and the Historic St. Andrews Waterfront Partnership, are separate 501c3s with boards that operate independent of the city and have been good partners, not without any ups and downs, as happens with humans. So,
Thank you so much, board members. So the motion on the floor is to also add into that information on citizen advisory boards, and so both those would be brought back. Is there any further discussion from the board? All right, Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger,
Yes.
Board Member Street,
Yes.
Board Member Halligus.
Yes.
Board Member Lucas,
yes.
Chairman Rowan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank-
And Director, there was a comment made specifically referencing a conversation
Yes, ma'am.
meeting that I'd like to address at this point.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was in reference to a meeting with Ms. Brenda Lewis Williams, Ms. Michelle Bryant, and Mr. Tony Bostic, in which I promised to do everything to take care of A.D. Harris. And while you may see, you may differ with my support of the HRP funds going to A.D. Harris, I would like to say that that is in accordance with my promise to you. The school needs repairs.
these repairs can help it become less expensive to run. And so that's what we will be discussing under that item. But if we ultimately want to get this facility into the hands of the community, I don't want us to turn over a facility that's in disrepair. And so that's the reason for what we will discuss as repairs for that school.
Does any other board member want to respond to any of the public comments that are not part of the agenda later this evening? All right, moving on to item number 7.
I have a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Is the question that Patty had about the Millville lots? He's actually here. Is he going to be able to come up and answer her question during his part?
He would be able to, since
Okay.
it's for him. Yes, ma'am.
Just checking.
Yep.
All right.
That is now that is just to be clear, that's now number 9, just for the record.
Thank
Let me
Yes.
ask one thing.
Yes, sir,
and
Mr.
I
Chairman.
apologize for being late on this, but one of the Mrs. Williams out there said dropping it to 500,000 instead of $1 million downtown. Is that something we need to talk about here?
We will during the TIF, which will be
All
the
right.
new item number 8, which we'll be getting to momentarily, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. All right, thank you, board members. All right, now moving on to item number 7, which was originally number 11, which is discussion and consideration of correspondence received from the Historic St. Andrews Waterfront Partnership regarding the Memorandum of Understanding for the operation of the Panama City Publishing Company Museum. As background information, the CRA Board approved the MOU with the Historic St. Andrews Waterfront Partnership for fiscal year 2024-2025 at the October 15th, 2024 CRA Board meeting, with amendments to the annual funding from $25,000 to $28,000. The partnership presented this MOU to their board on Wednesday, November 13th, and has provided the attached correspondence in response. Staff seeks board direction on whether to amend the existing approved MOU and increase the annual contribution to the St. Andrews Waterfront Partnership. Board members?
So we're talking about increasing from 28 to 30?
No, to 28 to 30. That is correct, sir.
Okay.
Well, I was already supportive of the 30, so obviously I'm going to be supportive of this, and I'm sure Josh will too.
I was aware.
All right, is that a motion from one of the board members?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion from any of the other board meetings, board members regarding item number 7 with the St. Andrews Waterfront Partnership?
Just to point out, this is our CRA advisory board for St. Andrews, is the Waterfront Partnership. They've operated in that historically.
Basically, the DIV has to, so.
All right, any other discussion or comments from the board? All right, Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Street?
Yes.
Board Member Halligus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Chairman Rowan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, item number 8 was formerly item number 9, and that is discussion and consideration of a potential policy revisions to the approved TIF rebate program. As background information, at the CRA board meeting on April 16th of 2024, the board approved the attached tax increment rebate program, or TIF rebate program, and directed staff to collaborate with GAI consultants to finalize the guidelines and the application process for implementing the TIF rebate program. Following the adoption of the program, several policy items came to the attention of staff, which prompted staff to request further discussion and consideration from the board. These items for consideration are outlined in the attached PowerPoint presentation provided by John Jones, who is here, planning manager with GAI Consultants, should the board desire to revise the program. Staff seeks board direction on whether to amend the existing approved TIF rebate program. And again, Mr. John Jones with GAI is here to give the presentation to the board. He will do that, and then we will enter into deliberation on this item.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Being
Mr.
the
Jones. Thank you.
bad student in class.
Good evening. My name is John Jones with GAI Community Solutions Group, 618 South Street, Orlando, Florida, 32803. What we're going to talk about tonight is a program that the Chairman Hayes and his team have developed based on best practices and tailored to Panama City's development community. Tonight we're going to present the Downtown TIF Rebate Program, reflecting our previous discussions with the board members and outline the policy options. You'll have the opportunity to answer 2 questions tonight, possibly 3 questions based on the information that we've heard, to fine-tune that program. First, we're going to present how the TIF awards are calculated. Then we'll review and discuss the 2 questions, possibly the 3 questions, and then it'll be up to the CRA board to make a determination regarding those items. So feel free to sing out and stop me anytime during the presentation that you have any questions. We'll do our best to answer them. All right. So the purpose of the TIF rebate program is to encourage private sector investment, redevelopment, and public realm improvements that are consistent with your comprehensive plan and also with the city's recovery and redevelopment efforts. The program has basically 3 steps: basic program eligibility, how to apply, and then the performance agreement, monitoring the award, and the disbursement of the award. Items to resolve. First, we're going to talk about how is the TIF award determined. So the legal authorization is based on an area reinvestment agreement, and that's where quantified public or quantified private sector investments are used to generate a capital investment amount that is used to determine what the award amount would be. And we're going to walk through all the different steps and how we do the math. But it's based on the fact that there's a list of eligible costs and quantified costs. So the minimum threshold so far for Millville is proposed to be $500,000 in the downtown North District, $1 million for downtown and the St. Andrews District. The reason why these 2 numbers were selected is that the average commercial building permit value is about $1 million in Bay County. So $1 million being a threshold, below that in the areas that are more depressed and in need of more redevelopment. So how is a TIF award calculated? First, you look at the eligible costs. The list of eligible costs is there for your program. It's a pretty large list. It addresses almost everything that you could need with regards to redeveloping a building. From the numbers associated with these eligible costs, comes the taxable value. From the taxable value is how we get to the increment. So taxable value, that's the sum of all your eligible costs plus or times the taxable value rate of the property appraiser's office. When we looked at different construction projects in Bay County, the construction cost to the taxable value came out to be about 83%. So 83% of the construction costs is what the taxable value would be. For this program, we're proposing that each application's construction costs and the taxable value costs would be determined by the Bay County property appraiser. So you have that arm's length distance. So that gets us the taxable value. What is it? How much are they going to pay taxes on? So then we take our taxable value times the city and county millage rates times the collection rate, which for a CRA is 0.95, times an annual appreciation rate, which in the model that we use is 4%, times a 15-year rebate period. And then we multiply that times whatever the rebate amount is, whether it's 70%, 80%, 90%, or another percentage. So, I know this is getting boring. Okay. All right. So
Loves this. Patty loves this.
So we'll try and keep this going here. So eligible costs. So we assume in this example that it's going to be $5 million. So $5 million times a 0.83 number gives us a taxable value of about $4.1 million. The city and county millage rates, we're using the city millage rate here because the county millage rate is higher. The statutes require that you use the lower millage rate of the how do I say, the establishing CRA authority. So the lower millage rate is the city's millage rate. That's the millage rate that we're going to use here. Collection rate is 0.95, annual appreciation is 4%, and the period is 15 years. So those numbers go into the formula, and then it comes out with this. So let's see if we got a pointer on here. Maybe not.
You should.
Okay. Yes, but it doesn't work on a screen. Okay. So the circle that you see there, the red circle, shows 90%. So if the award was 90% rebated over 15 years, based on a $4.5 or $4.1 million taxable value, the award going to the award recipient would be approximately $682,000. That's about 13% of the total project costs when you do the
So that's money that the city won't get because it's giving it back.
CRA.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's a lot of money.
And half of that money is the county's.
Okay.
So, moving on. Half of that money comes from the county as well. All right. So you can see for year one, the increment is going to be about $37,000. 90% of that is going to be $34,000, and 80% would be $30,000. And then the rest, it increases, the taxable value increases at 4% a year, and that increases the increment amount each year as well.
John, before you go any further,
Yes, ma'am.
do you mind, just so people don't think the city's giving money that we already generate, can you explain that this is
Yes, ma'am.
new money
Yes,
that we
ma'am.
would not have otherwise?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So when the way this program works is the developer comes into the city, makes an application, says, I'm going to build this building, or renovate this building. It's going to cost X amount of dollars. And that increase in value increases the taxes that have to be paid on that. The rebate is when the developer pays the taxes to the city, a portion of that tax that the developer has paid comes back to the developer. So in the case of a 90% TIF rebate, 90% of the taxes that the developer would pay based on the increment increase would come back to the developer. The other 10% would go to the CRA. And in addition to the 10% going to the CRA continues, and the city and the county continue to get the base year value, the base year taxes that were being collected when the CRA was first established.
When the developer says it's going to cost me $5 million, how do we know that the developer is accurate?
The program requires that the developer enter into a performance agreement. The performance agreement outlines what the developer is going to do. It outlines what the developer promises to do and what the city, or the CRA in this case, promises to do. So they say we're going to invest X amount of dollars in a certain amount of time, and it's going to come on the tax roll at this date. The CRA says, if you do that, then, and you pay your taxes on time, then we will rebate a certain amount of that incremental tax to you. So both parties have skin in the game, so to speak. The developer has to build the building first. The building has to be CO'd, or the improvements have to be CO'd, and they have to pay their taxes on time.
They have to be CO'd?
Yes, certificate of occupancy. Yes, sir.
And that's issued by the city, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Once they pay their taxes, then they submit a letter requesting the tax rebate to the city, referencing their agreement and demonstrating that they paid their taxes. Once they do that, then the city is able to turn around and issue them the rebate.
So the city, the CRA can see what expenses they've paid?
Yes, sir.
I mean, in other words, they can't fudge the number and say, we got a $10 million deal and it's really only $5 million.
Correct. And all of the tax information regarding payment and valuation will be verified by Bay County Property Appraiser.
Okay.
So is the premise that year 16 and beyond, the building will hold its value and the city will then get the full amount of the taxable dollars?
Yes, that is correct.
Are there any scenarios where the opposite is true, that
So the thing that runs this, or that influences the amount of the rebate given, is the change in value of the property. So if the property, in this example, the property is increasing at approximately 4% a year. If the property increases in value greater than 4% a year, the developer will be paying more taxes each year. The rebate will be larger each year. And so they may get to the full amount of the award rebate before 15 years. So that's why you have a 15-year period, because you want to be able to address any peaks and valleys that you may have with regards to property valuation. Because sometimes the years go up, sometimes it goes down. And so if it goes down, it's going to take longer for the developer to get that full award amount, and it may take 15 years.
so the full award amount is calculated at the very beginning?
Correct.
How is it calculated, the full award? Oh, okay, we're back
So
to
the award amount is taxable value times the millage rates times the collection rate times the appreciation rate times 15 years times whatever the rebate percentage is. And that gives you your award amount. That's what the CRA agrees to pay in the performance agreement.
So you're agreeing to that amount or 15 years?
No, you're whichever comes first.
Right, okay.
So you get the full award amount over a 15-year period, or you get the award, you get a rebate over a 15-year period. You may, if the economy goes south and the property values go down, you may never get that full award amount. But you will get 90% or 70% or 80% of your increment tax payment paid back to you.
And I think it's important to note, Board, that each one of these agreements will come before you for approval.
So
Yeah.
each TIF agreement is going to come here that the CRA will look at.
That is correct. Okay.
Each award application
It's
will
reassuring.
come to you, and each performance agreement will come to you. It's on a case-by-case basis. The CRA board has the leeway to grant additional bonuses with regards to the amount of the award based on the inclusion of mixed uses, affordable housing, or a CRA desired amenity. If there's a particular amenity that the CRA desires that a developer proposes to include, you could use that as a rationale for giving them a bonus over the 70% base amount. All right, so the first item to resolve is, should a TIF rebate award be based on eligible capital improvement values related rebate based on investment, or should the TIF rebate award be open-ended? This was one of the items that we discussed. And so with regards to eligible costs, the award is based on itemized improvements and their taxable values. The rebate can exceed the increment that's generated from the eligible costs. Cannot, sorry, cannot. I misread that. And then on open-ended, the award would be based on the proposed improvements taxable value. The performance agreement would say we're going to put in X amount of dollars, but then the rebate would be based over a 15-year period. It may exceed the value of the eligible costs. So the developer may be getting more income than the increment generated from his eligible costs, if it's an open-ended and doesn't have a quantified amount.
Can you give us an example?
An example would be if a developer put in $100,000 worth of improvements, they would be spinning off $100,000 of increment value. If they sell the building for more than $100,000 before the 15 years passes, they would still be getting a rebate on the 90% of the taxes paid for the new taxable value of the building, the sale price of the building.
You don't have any, but what's the downside?
The downside for the open-ended or for eligible costs, there is no downside. It's quantified. It's a quantified, determined amount. It's a finite amount.
Open-ended is,
Open-ended is different.
okay.
So open-ended, it's more dollars to encourage investors, which is, that's the plus side. The con side is the rebate may exceed the increment. It's not in accordance directly with our authorizing statute, which is something we need to determine. And the rebate may be more influenced by appraisals and speculations than investment. And it may not be an equitable arrangement. For example, if one investor puts in 10 and another investor puts in 5, the rebate needs to be based on the amount of the investment, the amount of risk. If it's not based on the amount of risk or the amount of dollars invested and it can't be reproduced, then it's not an equitable process.
So I would say John does not support the open-ended.
It's problematic. It's problematic. I'm not here to support or be against anything. I am here just to present the facts, ma'am. But I appreciate the jest, though.
You gotta keep it calm. in
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
A process question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hayes, are we going to entertain each one of these questions, hear them all first, and then are you looking for a motion on each of these questions, items to be resolved?
I am going to look for 3 separate motions tonight dealing with the cap, what to do after the sale, and then if it should be retroactive or not. But we'll do that individually after we complete the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. That's a very good question, Commissioner. Ideally, the presentation may address some of the questions that you're anticipating. So the other item to resolve is, should an award recipient continue to receive the award after they sell the incentivized project? That is, they receive an award, they satisfy their performance terms, they collect the award for a portion of time, then they decide to sell the property. So, pros, the developer took a risk, they deserve the award. The CRA gets the development and the improvements that they wanted, and it'll encourage additional development. The cons, the developer undertook a project that couldn't be done without the CRA help, The sale and the profits wouldn't have occurred without the CRA investment and assistance. Future ad valorem payments may not be coming from the developer, and they may be hard to verify the tax payment and timing of the payments.
Are we requiring a but-for statement on every single one of these that come before us?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And to address that even further, Commissioner Granger, is you're also asking, as part of the criteria, you're asking for a certification from their financial institution of need. So they need to demonstrate that there is a gap in their funding, and that gap in funding can be addressed by the tax increment rebate.
Wait, you're saying they have to show us that they have a gap in funding?
They have to demonstrate their need. Yes, ma'am.
Is that statutory?
No, ma'am. Or sir. That's it. Got me.
The beard sometimes throws people, but so why is that a requirement then?
Yeah, I don't like that.
It's an incentive. So you need to demonstrate that you need the incentive. It's the but-for clause, basically. It is a formal but-for clause.
So I personally wouldn't want somebody developing that can't afford the project.
Yeah.
So if someone had to demonstrate a need to me, they're doing a $5 million project and they're like, I can't do this without your over 15 years of $600,000, I would be very concerned of giving them that they're even going to finish the project. Like that's it. That's the first I've heard of that one. That's it.
Yeah,
But that's just me.
I'm fine with somebody needing it, but I don't like the idea of requiring them to need it.
So that's typically of all the other agreements that we've had, there's had to be a gap that's proven to before giving the incentive, whether it be with the merchant fee, whether it be with Sweet Bay agreement, there has to be shown some kind of gap in the funding before that. But personally, I think it's bad for this particular issue, only from the standpoint of the need we have is for people to invest in these areas.
Yeah.
So that's addressing the need that we have. I don't need someone else to show another need beyond that. So if that makes sense. I mean, I think if anything, we should encourage the best investors that we possibly can to do the best projects that they absolutely can, and offering incentive as a result. That's where I stand on that particular issue.
Yeah, I'm with
But
Brian.
but for the CRAs.
Otherwise, you get into some weird situations where somebody can afford it, but then they can't afford it on paper. And
Right, that's what I would
it's
do.
just-
I'd be like, whoops, I'm $650,000 short.
yeah.
I mean,
If
if you want to lean onto the CRA, that's fascinating. Now, I'm not saying that you should. I'm with you, Brian. I'm not saying you should turn somebody away because of having a gap.
Yeah.
But that to me, the whole point is to stay focused and incentifying development. And good investors and good developers are not something I want to turn away.
Yeah, this would be an
It's
ideal.
like I don't care. I'm just giving you the facts.
This would be an ideal thing that somebody that's looking to invest would look at Panama City in all the different CRAs that we have and go, I can do something there, and
Yes.
I'd rather spend my money there than elsewhere because I'm getting a better deal here.
That's
Yeah, I do more. Yeah. So
Is-
I'm in
is-
favor of taking that out. Sorry.
Is this but for generally standard or common in
Yes, ma'am.
all of the CRA
Yes, ma'am. And-
TIF agreements
and
that you
pretty
provide?
much every one of the programs we evaluated had a demonstration of financial need and a
And-
but-for clause.
How were they handled in other areas?
The developer would produce their pro forma and bring it to the city and say, here's our gap. You know, based on our rental rates, based on our expenses, our capital investment amounts, our available capital, we have a gap of X. And to close that gap of X is when the TIF rebate comes into play.
Did that but for also include the developer's profit margin?
It may have, yes, sir.
So really, it's semantics.
it's paper.
Yeah.
It's
Why
paper.
bother?
It's paper that someone has signed their name to and has attested to.
Could it be potentially so that it does not appear that the government is subsidizing a specific project that
Yeah, because
is
that's
not
what it
needed?
feels like.
Okay. I think
Because in
that's-
all of this, the public good is the basis,
Revitalization.
so that we
sure.
are not in competition with the private market.
Correct.
What's the success rate in the downfall of having the gap?
Yeah, I think we'll hold that question, ma'am,
Okay.
and we'll repeat it just because there's people online watching as well, but we'll
Okay.
be sure to address that in the deliberative process.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yes, sir.
If we could, just for the sake of time, as I know we've got to that, could we just go through these items to resolve and quickly make a decision on these items? I mean, I'm prepared,
You got it.
I've been through this.
All right. So first question to resolve, should the TIF rebate award be based on eligible improvements or should the award amount be open-ended?
I move, no, the award amount should not be open-ended.
If that's a motion, I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second that there should be a cap. It should not be open-ended. Is there any deliberation by the board?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Just for a definition, as far as what open-ended means and all, and then what a cap means.
Whoops. No, you're on.
No,
You're
it's
off
not.
now.
Not yet.
Not, okay.
Now you are.
There are two ways of, you can have a cap, and the cap is a sum of money as calculated for eligible investment. And then it is there until it's paid back, or maybe 15 years, or some number of years. And so that it is capped by both 15 years, and it's also capped by the amount of money. If you just said you get whatever the increment is that your project generates and cap it by 15 years, maybe that's an open-ended cap. I don't know, because it doesn't really deal with what the eligible costs are, but it doesn't go on forever. That's the point I was making. What this motion in your mind, I believe the way it was presented, is that it is open-ended. The way it's presented is that open-ended would be, I don't know, does that mean that it just doesn't have a specific amount of money tied to it?
Correct. The dollar amount has not been determined.
Okay. So it's not open, it's really not dealing with, because it may be an idea to do 15 years as a cap, but then not have it tied specifically to eligible costs. But I understand so here, Commissioner Lucas, I'm stammering around here, but I just wanted us to think about what open-ended means. And the way that it was presented, open-ended means that it would not have that eligible cost calculation. And that's what...
And those were the two options, eligible cost or open-ended, correct?
Right.
And so looking at the pros and cons of both of those, the cons for open-ended, not in accordance with the authorizing statute, rebate may exceed increment from taxable value of eligible costs, rebate more influenced by appraisal, speculations, and investment, and it's not equitable. So in my view, based on what's been presented, the cons outweigh the pros for this open-ended rebate award.
But also, I think some would say open-ended also means it never stops. In other words, it just continues. It isn't even limited by 15.
I think one of the things is we don't control what the property appraiser appraises something at, so a timeline seems to be the best way to cap that, in my opinion. So 15 years sounds reasonable to me, and...
What I love about 15 years is simple. And Nevin, you told me that the statute, this is in no way, if we said, okay, well, the cap basically is not open-ending, but the cap is at 15 years, their percentage of what they went, good for them. I mean, if they made their tax base go up that much and it allowed for more development and it did all that, like, well, why would I care? I think the 15 years, I think what you're, because it was a little bit confusing, I think that, well, I don't mean open-ended, but just saying, okay, what you've earned from the percentage of how we figure out your award for that 15 years. And by the way, the 15 years is what we have left in the CRA. So if somebody comes in 5 years from now and they want to do it, they would only be guaranteed for 10. So it would end no matter what at the sunset of whatever the current CRA.
Is it not so if someone comes in 5 years, it would not be 15 years for that?
Well, because we couldn't guarantee it. Right? We don't know, because the county's the one that, Jared's doing his hand.
Go ahead, sorry.
Oh. So can y'all explain the
Is there a
CRA?
termination date to CRA?
Have quite a few questions here, and all very good, by the way.
I think 15 years is the cap. If the CRA somehow got dissolved tomorrow, we would not owe anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never, under any scenario, the CRA would never owe any money that's not part of the increment. In other words, the new money that's generated by the project. So it would, under any scenario, that would not occur. So if the CRA terminated, that's all there is, and that's would be addressed in the agreement. If everyone decided not to pay any tax, not to have a tax rate anymore, ad valorem tax rate, then there wouldn't be any increment money. So there wouldn't be any payment.
So is this question before us a per application, open-ended, or open-ended for the entire TIF program?
I think the question is maybe not presented properly.
I think it's for the entire program.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
the
I
entire
would agree.
program.
While you do get to look at each individual application, this particular question that we're answering would apply to the entirety of the program, board member.
So in the same way that a CRA has a 20-year limit, we're saying here it's not open-ended ad nauseum forever. It'll be 15 years. In that time, this board or whoever's sitting in this board seat could say, let's continue it another 15 years. Is that
No,
correct?
it's the county who decides if the CRA continues, right?
Now, this,
Okay, help me out.
pardon, no worries. The CRA can only disperse funds during the operational period of the CRA, and the CRA sunset date is 2044.
That's why it's based on 15 right now.
So it's a moot question?
It
It's only
really
going to go
is.
15 years.
Yeah.
Well, who renews this? Can someone please, because I thought that the county was,
The question before us is whether or not there should be an additional cap to the 15 years.
The question is, do you want to quantify what the maximum
That's
award
the
is?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
the question.
And I understood Commissioner Lucas's motion
That's a good
to
one.
include the monetary cap. Am I wrong?
the 15 years, yes.
Yes.
I think both options have 15 years, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's-
Both
you-
options have 15 years.
Okay, so one is saying that we're going to calculate ahead of time how much they get, and that's all they get. And
Yes.
the other one says, hey, if there's increments that go a lot higher than that, then they get it. That's how they get it, is on how high the increments go.
So the cons presented for open-ended is what I'm saying, let's not do that, okay?
That's just 15 years.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And that's what I second.
John?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what Ms. Lucas is saying.
Okay, you presented us pros and cons.
Yes, ma'am.
Of open-ended.
Yes, ma'am.
Based on this, I am saying no to open-ended. That's my motion.
Okay.
But
Open-ended meaning, or I should say, the opposite of open-ended meaning a quantified award amount.
Eligible costs, yes.
Okay.
so
So that would include the amount and the years
Yeah.
capped at the beginning, determined at the beginning.
Correct. Based on eligible capital improvements up to 15 years, the rebate is based on the investment. It is not open-ended.
Which
I
is how
agree
you
with Ms.
Gave
Walker.
us the scenario calculation here.
Yes.
So this is what I'm saying.
That would be capped
Commissioner-
at that. That's what we agreed to do.
Yes.
Correct.
And if they, according to what you said, if the market does well, they can get that before 15 years. If it doesn't, they could get it in 17 years or in 21.
Or they may never get it if the CRA ceases to exist.
15 years is the max on both systems, so, right?
Yes.
Commissioner,
Because the CRA, the state may decide to extend them, but as it stands right now, 2044 is the end of the CRA, and so therefore 15 years is the brick wall, period, on both of these.
So I don't think anyone's arguing that. I think we're confused on which one allows, like, where we pick the number in the beginning, like we go based on this calculation.
90,
and say,
80, 70.
And say, yeah, it's 600, and that's what it is,
I
no
think
matter how
that's-
much taxes we collect.
I think that's what she's motioned for.
Yes, I think that's what she's
What-
motioning.
Yes.
Okay.
a suggestion is that maybe instead of saying it in the negative, Commissioner, are you in favor of having this program determined by eligible cost and having a number calculated at the beginning?
Yes.
In other words, you're in favor of the option that is not open. We're struggling in defining what open means.
So, item to resolve, should a TIF rebate award be based on eligible capital improvements value, rebate based on investment, or should TIF rebate award be open-ended, no final amount determined? So the R is, you want me to put the motion in
In a positive. Is that okay?
move that the TIF rebate award be based on eligible capital improvement value with a 15-year cap.
Okay.
Very good. I'll still second that.
Okay.
All right.
So that, and I apologize to do that, but I think that just helps frame everything a little bit better. We don't have to worry as much what openness means.
I feel
One
better.
more item of discussion, then what's the percentage?
It's the pre-calculated.
Yeah, the percentage is determined on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Based
Yeah.
on the base
All right.
value of
I'll leave it
70% with possible.
Yeah, board member,
additions.
y'all could choose 90, y'all could choose 80, you could choose 70. I do want to just get one point of clarification, though. It would be the first of. So if, in the example that was on the screen, once they get to that $682,000, if they do that in 13 years,
To be clear, that's
It's
in a
over.
$5 million example.
Correct.
The amount could be more if it was some more of an investment.
but I just want to make sure the board understands that that amount of 682, if they get there before 15 years, it's
Yeah.
done at 682.
It's
Yes.
done.
Yep.
Yes.
Right, it's done.
So they don't get extra money for the next couple of years.
Right.
All right. So there's a motion and a second on the floor that the cap be based on the eligible capital improvements, value up to 15 years, and that rebate is based on the actual investment. Is there any further discussion from the board?
Oh, we got to get going, Josh.
Yep. All right, Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll on item 1.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Street?
Yes.
Board Member Halligus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Chairman Rowan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
If I could just give you guys my feedback on the remaining items. One is, personally, for St. Andrews at least, I still support the $1 million cap, and I would encourage us to have this sunset in 3 years, like make this an incentive package for a very short amount of time so that we come back and revisit it and see if it's been successful or it hasn't. So, now, that doesn't mean the awards that get awarded between now and the next 3 years, they would still continue. But as far as new businesses, hey, this is available for now, and particularly on large capital projects. That was just one. The second one was on ownership. My personal feelings are, as long as someone maintains some percentage of ownership in whatever the project is, and this really would only apply to something that has to do with a condominium or something that has to do with some kind of multi-tenant space. As long as they maintain ownership of something, I have no problem with them continuing to receive the full rebate through the full term. As long as they stay invested in the community. The reason for that is it prevents someone exporting our tax dollars outside of the community. So if they come and invest, they stay committed, they're going to be invested in the upkeep of said project, regardless of whether they 1% or they own 100% of the project. And therefore, they would have an invested interest in maintaining it and continuing it to being in good condition. So
Josh.
those are just the two that I just would
Before
say.
you go, why
Yeah.
do you feel so strong about the $1 million?
Partially because that's why we canceled the other grant programs. We spent so much time in administration that we spent more on staffing on those programs than we ever did on giving out the money. And so in this case, there is a point that this is such a complicated formula that it doesn't make sense to really do it any smaller than something. And for St. Andrews at least, I know we're a small district. Maybe we'll be bigger one day, but we're a very small area. And so I'd love to just incentive something that's larger. Cost of construction is that. And two, it keeps us from having all this administration involved on a smaller project. That's it.
It's a good point. Lena, you agree with her? Okay.
So,
All right.
so thank you guys. Obviously, I trust the board's decision. So I just wanted to give you guys feedback. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Board Member Street. And we'll note in the minutes that Mr. Street had to excuse himself at 5:59. All right. The second decision before the board is should the TIF rebate continue after the sale of the property?
That is correct.
Jones?
Yes, sir. Mr. Street addressed option number 1, rebate on remnants of the property until the full award amount is paid out. So that would continue award payments after a partial sale of the properties. The award would be based on the taxes paid on the remnants owned by the developer up until the full award amount is paid out, or 15 years, whichever one comes first. Option 2 would be a continued rebate after the sale until the full award is paid out if they sell the whole thing and retain ownership of nothing. Option 3 is kind of a hybrid. They would hold on to the property for 5 years, and then after 5 years, they could sell it and continue to receive the full award. Option 1 is to encourage ownership and discourage flippers in the exportation of dollars, as the commissioner noted. Option 2 is just a full payout. Because they made the investment, they took the risk, they get the reward for the 15 years. And then option 3 is a 5-year wait. So they have to hold it for 5 years or until the property stabilizes, which is usually about 5 years. And then they continue the rebate after that. If they sell it before 5 years, they don't get to continue the rebate.
All right, thank you. All right, board members, do you have a question before you regarding the TIF rebate continuing after settle the property with 3 potential options suggested for your consideration?
Could you go over the 3 slowly?
Yes, sir.
And so this is if somebody's got the TIF rebate and they sell the property, and they could sell it at year 1, 2, 3, any year.
Right. So if they sell it in option 1, if they sell it in year 1, they sell 50% of the property, they would still be paying taxes on that 50% that they still own. So they would get the increment rebate of, if they would get 90% of the 50% of the taxes that they pay in. Option 2 is if they sell it in year 1, they would continue to get the full award amount. If they sell the whole property, if they sell everything, they would continue to get the whole award amount until the award is paid out or 15 years goes by. And then option 3 is they would have to hold the property for 5 years after they complete it, get their CO, and start collecting the rebate. If they sell it after 5 years, they would continue to get the rebate until the full rebate amount is paid or until 15 years goes by. With regards to option 3 is if they sell it before 5 years, then they don't get any continued TIF rebate. So you have a partial, you have a full, and you have a maybe.
Board Member Granger, I think you were starting to say something, sir.
Yeah, I was going to motion we do option 1.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and second on the floor that the board adopt option number 1 regarding the continuation of a TIF rebate after sale of the property, which would be a rebate on the remnants until the full award is paid out. Is there deliberation from the board on option number 1?
I'd like to make one point, and that is, as an example, just make sure I'm understanding it right, Mr. Jones. The example is it's $1 million that I sell it for, and and the amount, it's not $1 million. I sold off $1 million, but I'm retaining $200,000 worth of the total project.
Mm-hmm.
So under option 1, my rebate would be proportionately shrunk, correct?
The rebate would, the percentage of the rebate would remain the same, but the taxes that you pay in would be less because you're paying taxes on a smaller portion of property.
So I would not, the chances of realizing the total investment would be much less because I'm not paying as much taxes because
Correct.
the people that I sold it to are paying the taxes.
That is correct.
Would the people that you sold it to, would they get the rebate?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, so you would then base the amount of rebate off of just what that developer maintained.
That 200,000 value that you
that
continue
you
to pay
had,
taxes.
and then not the whole 1.2 that they
Right.
had. Okay.
Right. They would, and so the taxes, the increment is pro rata.
Correct.
Based upon that $200,000 value
Correct.
rather than, and where option 2 is the same example, but whether you sold it all or kept a piece, it doesn't matter. You'd still be able to receive the total amount
Yeah, the total amount
based
still.
upon taxes
total
that were
amount.
paid by those people you sold it to.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
I just wanted to.
Okay, and that's important because I want to make sure I know what I'm voting for. What I'm
Yeah.
voting for is that as long as there's some ownership as long as there's some ownership, the developer will still get the full reward.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were doing.
And if that's not what we're doing, that's not what I'm voting for.
Well, they could get the full reward depending on the amount that it comes to, but whatever that comes to, it could be less.
So what
Right, I will amend my motion.
Yeah, then I'll amend.
And
my
I'm not
motion
going to
as
opt
well.
for an option.
Yeah.
I'm just going to spell it out.
Okay.
All right. So I move that the developer will continue to receive the payment
The full award.
for the full award for up to 15 years or until it's paid out, as long as they retain some ownership
Yes.
of the property.
And that's what I support as well.
All right. So you're
That's not option one. That's none of those options up there.
Not if those
I
options.
just want to be clear.
and that's
That
fine.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion, and Ms. Halligus has accepted the modification of that. And so, is there further deliberation by the board on Board Member Granger's motion?
So they would only, let's see, they've sold part of it?
Yeah.
They
so-
would only get the rebate on what they retain.
No, they get the rebate on the full amount because this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to incentivize development. That's what we're trying to do. So if we say, hey, we want you to come drop $5 million into this property, but after you sell the units out of it, you're only going to get a little bit each month or each year, because those people are now going to, you're not going to own that anymore, so you're not going to have it. Now, I think there's value in having the developers stick around, because I would much rather see developers invest in the area and stay than take money out and send it to somewhere else. So I like his comment earlier, because it's kind of growing it locally rather than mining it and shipping it elsewhere. But at the same time, if we went with option one, we would only incentivize certain types of development instead of all development. Does that make sense?
How does this preclude someone from the outside from taking advantage of this and still, shipping money out of here?
Well, I mean, it
Maybe they do.
you can't
Maybe they do.
you can't prevent somebody from shipping money out, but the idea.
That was the framework of the example.
But the idea is that they wouldn't just build something and then a year later be gone, right? They'd still be present because they'd still be an owner. I mean, they may not be physically present, but they would still have a vested interest in the continued growth and acceleration of the community.
Is there value in determining what that partial amount could be? I mean, if they sell it and retain 1%, this would apply as we have stated it here now, correct?
That's a great question. And I would like to leave that up to when they bring that to us, just like the percentage that we would give them, whether that be 90, 80, 70%. I would suggest that we need to define that on every single deal, because somebody may come to us and say, I want to build a bunch of condos. And somebody may come to us and say, hey, I want to build a few condos on the top and I want to have commercial down below. I mean, each deal's different. And so I think we need that flexibility as a board to be able to use that as a carrot for development.
I would like to add that as an investor myself, I feel like the reason why I support the motion that we're talking about here is that no matter what I decide to do, I am making an agreement with the city ahead of time that this is a feasible project for me, knowing I'm going to get this reward back regardless of, we're putting in a regardless, because we're putting in that you have to still have some ownership in it. But besides that, like, the city was willing to do that agreement with me regardless of whether I was, if I was going to sell part of the condos or not. So to me, it's irrelevant, except for the fact that we're just making ourselves feel good about keeping some ownership in it. But I think that we need to just respect, free enterprise and how people invest and smart investment. And I just, that's why I kind of feel like we're agreeing to make that agreement. We don't need to be putting in all the little details of why we think that someone, if they make more money or they get to keep the money, or they, we were talking about Bay City Point earlier about how that those incentives went with them, even though they sold that. But that was still such a great thing for the city to do at the time because, Hobby Lobby ends up moving in over there, but then that opened up a building that was big enough for Academy. That was, so it's never, that was Jared, by the way, that was bringing that up earlier. But it's just that whole, it's the whole thing. It's not just one project. It's about building it all up. And anyway, so that's why I just wanted to bring it up.
All right. Before we move on, I want to ask Ms. Sagehorn and Ms. Webb, can you just state what you have in the minutes as the motion, Ms. Sagehorn, since Lena doesn't have a mic?
Oh, well, I don't have that note.
Okay. Can we get a mic for her, please? Sorry, Jerome.
Here's one.
Oh, there you go.
Pass it down.
Just pass it down.
We're giving her Josh's. Thank you, Ms. Webb. If you could just state what you have down for the official minutes, please.
I have the Commissioner Granger motion that the developer continues to receive the full award as long as partial ownership is retained.
Do you concur, Board Member Granger?
15 years.
Up to 15
Well, yeah, I
years.
mean, the 15 years is
15 years goes without.
Yeah, it goes without it.
And I just want to reiterate what Brian said about the, if we leave it more open when it comes to us every time, if somebody's only going to keep 1%, right? Then maybe that's a different, maybe we don't agree or we agree or whatever, but we're keeping it open with a lot less limitations.
Yeah, and it may make sense in that particular development. It may not make sense in others.
That's right.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't know what percentage they're going to keep at the time we award the TIF.
We can make that a part of the agreement.
Yeah, that's
That
okay.
it comes
There-
back if they want to sell.
There is, Commissioner,
Well, that's
it's
a
a
good
good,
idea.
yeah, it's a good question. I think, I don't know exactly how it'll be dealt with in the agreement, but one thing it could be that there is this opportunity, and if they, that they would have to come back and demonstrate, how the percentage ownership they have, that they have skin in the game. In other words, why that is helpful to the project and why they deserve to keep the full award.
So if they should determine that they want to sell, they have to come back to this board.
Or we negotiate it up front. I don't know if we can negotiate it
I
up
don't
front.
think we can.
But I don't think that we can decide that tonight. How about that?
But we can say that we want them to come back.
Yes.
Just as if we were to decide that we
Right.
were to require them to retain ownership, I think what we can do is determine up front how we want a potential sale to be handled,
I
and that it
think
does
that's
not
correct.
advance without coming back to the CRA as a partner in that development.
I believe that is a fair statement. They would have to come back and let us know, and then would need to, CRA board would approve it.
Is it inappropriate to, I mean, we have like the pioneers of this TIP program back here, and I'd kind of be interested if we seem on target or we seem off target. Is that something we can?
If the board would like to recognize, I'm assuming you're pointing at Mr. Whaler,
I
who
am.
does have experience in this. I would entertain a motion to allow Mr. Whaler to address the board on this matter.
I would like to move a motion to be able to listen to what he has to say.
Is there a second? All right, please call the roll. Ms. Sagehorn?
Board Member Granger?
Well, hold on. We already had a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Right, but he's
Procedurally.
addressing this motion, which is appropriate in Robert's Rules of Order. He wants to address this before you vote on
sub-motion?
this motion. Yeah,
Yes.
the motion is to allow him to address y'all on this particular motion. Call the roll,
Yes.
please.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Halligus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Chairman Rowan?
No.
Motion passes.
I believe it has to be unanimous, correct, Mr. Zimmerman? I believe that's our rules of procedures. So, sorry, Mr. Whaler. Thank you, though. All right, so we're back to the original motion at hand, and the motion that Mr. Granger made, and we've read it. Mr. Zimmerman, any other comments on that motion, just to make sure you're completely comfortable before we call the roll?
I understand the motion.
All right. I'm going to put you on the spot one more time, Ms. Webb, just to make sure that everybody is tracking. If you'll please state the motion, please, as you have it recorded.
Are we going to include
The 15 years. I think you can state that even though that goes without being said.
Okay, so we're not including any of the modification from Commissioner Lucas.
No, ma'am.
Because we can address that later, right?
That is correct.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Motion from Commissioner Granger to allow the developer to continue to receive the full award as long as partial ownership is retained for the term of 15 years.
Yes, I still
All right.
support that motion.
All right. Is there any further discussion before we call the roll?
I just wanted a point of clarity, please. I'm sorry.
No. This is important.
We just discussed, determining this, like having it come back to the CRA board if someone's wanting to sell. So why would we even put this into the program if we're going to bring it back to the CRA board to determine whether we're willing to give them the full amount or
We don't know if we want to bring it back to the CRA.
Yeah,
yet.
again, it's on a, Ms. Waldron, my understanding is, and board members, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's because you don't have to do that on every agreement. You may choose to do it on one, and you may choose
But
not
if we
to.
put this into the program, that's what it's going to be. I think we might need to add some language that in the agreements that it could come back to the CRA board.
That's what we're voting on to
But
tell
that's
y'all
not-
to do.
That's not
Not the
stated in the
motion.
mission.
Is
Motion.
the motion says that we would continue. Developer would continue to receive the full award up to 15 years as long as they maintain some ownership. It doesn't say pursuant to the board approval or anything.
I will modify my motion to include pursuant to board approval.
I'll second that.
Good.
Sorry.
All right. Is there any further deliberation?
Just as a comment, there will be an agreement that will be entered into each developer on the front end, and that's why these are general principles, but then the devil's in the details, obviously, but then there will be an agreement.
All right. Is there any further deliberation on item number 2? All right, Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Halligus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Chairman Rowan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right. And then question number 3 before us. If you'll advance that, John.
The third question was with
Yep.
regards to the changing
right.
in the base value or base threshold for participation in the program for the downtown.
I thought it was being retroactive.
No, retroactive never made it
Okay.
out of the box.
Good. Even better. All right. Yeah. So item number 3 is regards to the minimum threshold investments of $500,000 for Millville and the downtown
Correct.
improvement,
Actually,
downtown
it
North
was
District.
for the
and
$1 million
Yep. And then $1 million for downtown and St. Andrew District. That's what's proposed. I think it would be appropriate to either affirm that recommendation or modify it if the board so desires. Board members?
So I heard what he said about St. Andrews. I respect what Josh says about St. Andrews because I don't really have enough knowledge over there to know what maybe the desire is. I will say that we do have a problem downtown because we still have a lot of vacant buildings and they're not for sale. So, for instance, I'm trying to help somebody right now with a restaurant that will be leased, and it's still going to be $400 and something thousand, which is still a pretty significant investment to get done. That they could certainly use a need or a gap, as you say. And so, I mean, I would like to entertain that. I think downtown, as I say a lot, is different than St. Andrews. But then it makes me think about Glenwood and Millville, that maybe that's a little too high of a standard. Maybe starting a business, leasing a business in, on MOK might cost $200,000 or $250,000. Should the threshold be a little bit lower? Now, I don't want to give a lot of work to Lena, and so that did kind of catch. You're looking at me funny.
Yeah. This is development.
Yes.
So leasing wouldn't fall
So
under.
business doesn't matter at all.
It's just
Well,
improvement
there's
of property.
Yeah, so it wouldn't matter. So if the threshold was 500,000, I mean,
For
you'd
all
have to
four.
buy.
You're suggesting that for all 4?
Well, I don't want to suggest in St. Andrews is the problem.
So
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
when this first kicked off, I was really, really trying hard to get that number lower because I was like, yeah, $100,000. Because I mean, you know, how in the world are you going to get to $500,000 on some of these properties, right? And then I sat down and actually did the math. And actually, you know, we didn't have that exact equation, but we had one similar. And I plugged in the math, and I'm like, that juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I mean, it was what he had said basically is that we're going to have to pay somebody to handle all of this, and then that eats into dollars that could be used for other things. And then when I realized the math just didn't make sense, I mean, it just didn't.
Okay.
That's where then I acquiesced and said, okay, the $500,000 amount is sufficient because that's where you actually start seeing the gain.
So what about 500,000 in downtown?
So, Commissioner Halligan, you're
If
making a
that's the-
motion that 500,000 be the minimum investment threshold for Millville, downtown North, and downtown, and then St. Andrews remains at 1 million?
Well, that's what Josh wanted, so I wouldn't want to.
Well, I'm not sure that's what he wanted.
But I don't know if he would want it if downtown was at 500. So,
Yeah.
but I would like. But I can't worry about that. I mean, it should at least if 500 is the threshold, no matter where it is in the city, that it doesn't make sense. Brian, I'm looking at you too.
No, so $1 million in Millville doesn't make any sense. I mean, it can with certain development, but 100,000 doesn't work either because then you wind up with like, I mean, it was just thousands of dollars, not.
I'm fine with that.
You know what I
get
mean?
that. But if 500,000 is still worth it in Millville, it should still be worth it in downtown.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just
If it's about number crunching.
and remember the purchase of the property is precluded from all of these, right?
Site acquisition is included.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so
if you previously owned the property, though,
that's why it went up to $1 million because I remember asking that question, why is there a disparity here? And it was because you can go buy properties in Millville for less than $1 million easily, whereas in downtown, that's a lot harder to do.
Yeah, but it still would just preclude that. I mean, it wouldn't like.
No, we're not precluding site acquisition. So that's my point. Is if I can go buy a property for $500,000 right across, on Harrison Avenue right here, then poof, I qualify, right?
But what's wrong with that?
So now we're going through the motions because I put $100,000 into a property when I bought it for $500,000, and you're not really incentivizing the development within the. You're not incentivizing the development that you think you're going to see. So if I can buy a property for $500,000, turn around and put $100,000 into it, and it increases to $550,000. I mean, obviously this board probably wouldn't approve something like that, but it just didn't make sense to go down that road is what was explained to me. So that's why they went up to $1 million, because once you've purchased a property for whatever the amount is, and then you've dumped money into it, you're probably over $1 million.
But then let that be the case. I mean, we're saying though that I feel like we're putting more limitations when if it's still worth it for 500,000, like you said, if somebody's only going to put 100,000 into it, I mean, are they really going to go through all that for that? And then on top of that, who's going to? I mean, if you're going to, like you said, it will come to the board anyway. And if you're like, we're doing this for $100,000, no, But I would rather. Especially if I have my downtown improvement people tell me that they think it would be that way, it kind of makes me wonder if I'm not. Now, if back to what your point was about being less than 500, I get that. And then Lena definitely was shaking her head over there. Yeah, like, no.
Yeah.
But I would rather do it at 500 across the board. And then if we don't like what we're seeing, then we can adjust the prices as we go. But I'd like to see if it incentivizes and we get more, and then great,
So I fought for the lower amounts. Like that's what I wanted, right? I was like 500 across the board, and the arguments that they gave me were I thought at the time pretty good, and unfortunately I'm not able to recall all of them. But I want to see. I want to say that the $1 million threshold was to prevent a slew of people just coming before the board wanting this thing, which may not happen. I don't think it will, but
Yep. Mr. Jones, can you speak to that, sir? I'm
When
assuming
we
these numbers
looked
were
at
not
the-
arbitrary.
Yes, when we looked at the average value of a commercial building permit in Bay County, it was over $1 million. It was like $1 million plus.
so why set the bar to that?
And that includes the beach.
That is true. The reason why is you wanted to affect projects that mattered, that would move the needle. You didn't want to incentivize every mom and pop, to put it bluntly. You want to incentivize significant capital investment and not lifestyle businesses.
And why is that?
Lifestyle businesses don't invest as much money in the community.
I don't think it hurt to try. And if for some reason it seems like we're not pulling in and it's not moving the needle, then change it.
All right. So Commissioner Halligus, it sounds like that's a motion for all four CRA districts to be $500,000 a minimum investment threshold. Is that a motion, ma'am?
It is a motion, but we can always bring it back another time if we don't agree to it.
All right. Is there a second to Board Member Halligus' motion?
Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second. Further deliberation by the board? That would set all four CRA districts at a minimum investment threshold for the TIF rebate award at $500,000. All right, hearing no more deliberation, Ms. Sagehorn.
While we're still deliberating,
Okay.
I suggest we keep it the way it is. That's my feeling.
What is,
Okay.
we don't have it yet. What are you referring to?
No, he's saying the way it's recommended would be $500,000 for Millville and downtown, and then $1 million for downtown north, and then $1 million for downtown and St. Andrews.
Right, correct.
So, all right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Halligus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Chairman Rowan?
No.
Motion passes.
All right, and the last item that was on this was, again, a recommendation by Board Member Street as he left for y'all just to consider. If you also desire, was to set a 3-year sunset on this program so that without action of the CRA board at that time, this program would end. If this is something y'all would want to consider doing, I would suggest to keep it more clean, sunsetting on November 30th of 2027 in 3 years. Is there a desire for anyone to make that motion?
A motion that we actually sunset at the end of September.
Okay, so
to align with
9/30
the,
of 2027?
Yes.
At the end of the
align-
fiscal year,
yeah,
okay.
Fiscal year.
Yep. All right, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, a second for this to sunset just shy of 3 years on September 30th of 2027 at the end of that fiscal year. Is there any deliberation from the board on the sunset motion on the table?
So this means if no one on the board requests that it comes back, that it'll automatically sunset. So there has to be active.
Proactive action by the board to continue past September 30th of 2027. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What is sunsetting?
It goes away automatically without any action.
What is it that's going away?
The
The whole TIF rebate program.
Okay, so we're talking about the TIF rebate program.
Correct. Not the CRA.
All right. Did it have a life of its own before this motion?
No.
No.
So it was,
I don't want to speak for Mr. Street, but I think the intent was that because we're expanding it to some degree, that having a sunset absent a proactive action and desire to continue by this board would be appropriate.
but if we have to approve every one of them, I don't see why we need a sunset. I mean, it just seems like we could approve it or not approve it, and then we wouldn't need this, but I guess I don't have any strong feelings. I kind of wonder why we're doing it.
Well, it's just kind of in line with good governance. Whenever you're creating rules and things that people need to follow or programs that people can apply for, you want to take a look at them occasionally and make sure that they're still meeting the needs of the community, So it's not meaning that it will go away. It just means that we have to look at it. That's all. That's the only purpose behind it.
I thought it meant it would go away.
Well, if we don't do anything.
If you don't
it
do
would.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to just follow up on the comments by Board Member Granger on the good governance, it would force this body in 3 years to have a conversation about it and deliberate it and
Evaluate.
evaluate it rather than just it automatically continuing into perpetuity.
Yeah, and with one motion, it can continue.
Yep.
So should we have a motion to require such a review? Because the sunset just says it's go away, but there's nothing that requires us to do what you just said.
I think you should have a review.
Yep.
Rather than a sunset?
Or, yeah, because, well, only just to force those that are sitting here to reevaluate this, to make sure everything's, it's been worth it. It's a good program. I think that might be, because that's what Josh is really concerned about,
Yeah.
right? Is just being able to evaluate it after 3 years, see if it's good or not. So why don't we just,
I think 3 years is kind of short too, but
that's
I
true.
don't know. What do you normally see out of these?
I would recommend 5 years.
Yeah.
It's probably going to take 3 years to complete any construction that starts tomorrow.
Okay.
And 2 years to stabilize and get on the tax roll.
All right, I rescind my motion.
I was going to ask if you would look at a 3-year review with a 5-year sunset.
Well, I think he was saying that it takes 3 years for construction sometimes, so we wouldn't really have much to review of the success of it by then. So really, we need probably at least 5 years of development or the program to see a true success or not.
Correct.
Do you think there'd be anything worth reviewing by the end of September 2027 if we do the 5-year sunset?
That's 3 years from now?
Yes, sir.
Actually,
a little bit less than 3 years.
Yeah, it depends on how fast things can get built.
Yeah.
And then it's also an 18-month turnaround from the time it's completed until it's on the tax roll.
But I would be
So-
thinking about the process, all these rules that we're putting into place. Do we need to tweak something to make it,
I think we're going to know well before that 3 years if we've got some rules that we need to be tweaking that aren't working.
All right, so I don't know if you withdrew your motion, if you want to modify it to just be September 30th of 2029. That would be 5 years.
A motion that we have a forced review.
Yeah, that's
that this comes back for review.
yeah.
Yes, September.
Prior to September 30th of 2029.
Prior to September 30th, 2029.
Modify my second to match that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on establishing a sunset provision of 9/30/2029, just shy of 5 years from now, with a review of the CRA board at that time?
No, sunset.
Can we ask Ms. Halligus to come out of retirement and give?
I always make jokes and think that I'm like, well, I can't wait till I'm just someone in the audience that gets to come up. I'm just going to play pranks on y'all.
If we add 3 or 4 members to this board, y'all could make her come back to that.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes, sir.
I don't believe sunset is the right term. I think it's forced review.
Yeah.
So
Forced
it doesn't die, but it has to be reviewed.
Understood.
I hope I'm relishing in wonderful development in 5 years from now.
All right. Mr. Granger, do you concur with that clarification?
I concur.
All right. You good with that? Ms. Halligus has made the second. All right. So for the purpose of the minutes and what we're about to vote on, by September 30th of 2029, forced review of this program by the CRA board at that time and relevant staff is required. Any further discussion? All right, Ms. Sagehorn, call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Halligus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Chairman Rowan?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Let me pause here. We are now on originally item number 7, which is now item number 9 in the order of the agenda. And that is consideration and approval of the commercial improvement grant application for 400, 402, 404 Church Avenue, the Millville District. Staff, am I on target correct? Everyone agree?
Yes.
That was
Is there anything else for Mr. Jones
Thank you,
tonight?
Oh, I apologize, Mr. Jones. No,
Yes.
please stand there for the rest of it. And we're going to ask you questions about the random things. No. Mr. Jones, thank you so much for making the trip up here and making
Yes,
yourself
thank you,
available.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes, Mayor Rosen, ladies and gentlemen of the CRA board. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. All right. All right. All right. So again, consideration and approval of,
Oh, wait, we didn't talk about the timeline of when the application would be open.
That was a question during public participation.
oh, my apologies.
Do we have the application complete, Lena? I think we do, don't we?
We were directed to continue working with GAI to complete the actual guidelines and application process once everything was finalized.
Okay, so how long do we think that's process?
We'll have these changes to you at the beginning of next week.
Okay, so can the application be open in the next 2 weeks?
It depends on how quickly you guys can advertise and adopt an ordinance.
Oh, great, okay. Well, can we have that on the next meeting?
Yep. So
When do we meet?
January.
In January?
we meet, the CRA board meeting, the CRA board does meet in January.
Thinking this is city.
So I think it's probably safe to say that applications can occur the day after the CRA meets in January. Is that a fair statement? Because we do, even though very broad guidelines have been adopted, there's a lot of specificity that's going to go in those applications, and I do encourage us to formally adopt those as a CRA board, unless you have a special meeting in December.
We could have a special meeting if this body desires in December. We had canceled it. This would be the only item we would really need to discuss. Is there a desire of this board to have a meeting in December?
So if we keep it January to do all that, is there any way we could just, if we
It would be
get,
the 21st, just for the record.
okay, so let's say until that time, in the 2 weeks, and they come up with an official application, can we open up the application pending a vote on the ordinance?
Yeah, certainly, you could have an application and everyone says, this is pending, not official, but if you want to go ahead and knock yourself out and get it turned in, they won't be finally processed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Until the CRA board meets and signs off on everything.
And that's good with me.
So is it
Is that-
possible that under this scenario, that on the day we meet, and sign off on everything, we would also consider whatever applications
front
are
of us.
already?
We could. Yeah.
All right, so I think what we will commit staff to, and what I just heard, that we'll have that application ready. I think if we can shoot for Monday, December 9th. Staff have any concerns with that, Mr. Jones? Ms. Waldron, you good with committing us to that? December 9th.
For first reading?
No,
It
ma'am.
will be
I'm so confused.
Okay, no, not yet. But yes, they would like that. No, just to have the application packet ready and for us to start accepting applications that
Oh,
we'll
yes,
bring back in
yes,
January.
yes,
Monday,
good.
December 9th. We'll have those available at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay?
Sweet.
6:30 has finally come.
Okay?
So I gotta leave.
Ooh, what all can I vote for?
So,
Yes, sir. Let's-
all right. Mr. Zimmerman, do you think we need a motion on any of that, or is that not necessary? Okay. All right.
Oh, man, it's unanimous from
We're
here.
good. All right. Let the
That's what I said. What are we
yeah.
going to vote for?
Let the minutes show at 6:37 p.m. Chairman Rohan excused himself. All right, back to the next agenda item. Consideration and approval of the commercial improvement grant application for 400, 402, and 404 Church Avenue in the Millville District. As background information, the CRA board members voted at the November 14th, 2023 meeting to temporarily reopen CRA grant application. No, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, a year ago. I'm sitting here thinking like, wait, that's like a week ago. From November 14th of 2023, 1 year ago, to temporarily reopen CRA grant applications to accommodate projects that are suffering hardship from the closure of grant programs. As a result, applications were accepted through December 14th of 2023 to be brought before the board for individual consideration for approval. 5 grant applications were reviewed at the January 9th, 2024 board meeting, including an incomplete application from Josh Sauls of Lady Loran LLC. Mr. Sauls was granted an extension for his application due to an error in current ordinances. Mr. Sauls returned to the July 16, 2024 meeting explaining the ordinance issues had just been resolved and requested additional time to complete his application. The board voted to allow Mr. Sauls until September 30th of 2024 to submit his completed application for the commercial improvement grant. That application was received on 9/30 of 2024 as required. Staff has completed due diligence and is presenting their review for approval. Staff recommends the approval for the CRA Commercial Improvement Grant application for Lady Loran LLC in the amount of $50,000. Board members?
Well, you know that I support this. I move a motion to approve, but I know that Patty had a question, so we'll
Okay, let's
get a second.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Deliberation from the board.
Is it okay if I ask the person who's receiving the grant, doing the development, to answer her questions?
I think it's appropriate for the applicant to be able to come forward and address the board. Mr.
You
Sauls?
say it in such a better governmental way than I do. You're so well trained.
Yeah.
Never happened for me. I never got well trained.
If you'll please state your name and just company name for the record, sir, that'd be
Josh Sauls, Lady Lorraine LLC.
All right.
It's Tree John.
Ms. Halligus?
Oh, I just Patty's questions. I don't remember exactly what they were, but
So, yeah, he did ask some questions, and I did not write down really good notes. Mr. Saul's 50K grant, which was going to be item number 7, but was
He was asking
modified.
about ownership of the property, sir.
Yep,
So
thank you.
I owned the property outright several months before this project started. I actually purchased the project, purchased that property specifically to utilize this grant in Millville
and Josh is actually from Millville,
on Church Avenue.
and he wants to give back and improve the
I
community.
want to see Church Avenue look like it used to whenever I was a kid.
So the other question was, do you own it? I'm out of order. Is this your project? Or
Yes.
did you build it
Yes.
for someone else?
No, it's his.
fine.
That's all.
All right, the question was, is this his project or is he doing it for someone else? And his answer
It's
was,
his.
it's his project.
And that was it, I think.
Yep.
Anybody else on the board have any questions for Mr. Sauls? Thank you so much, Mr. Sauls. We
Well, I got
appreciate
you guys. Thank you very much. I know it's been a long process.
It has.
What do y'all get what do you get my application for the TIF rebate?
Well, you're not quite there yet. I see you're at 473.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's always the next one.
Yeah. All right. Is there any further deliberation or questions from the board?
No, call the question.
All right. Ms. Sagehorn, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger,
Yes.
Board Member Halligus.
Yes.
Board Member Lucas.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Josh.
And then item number 10, which was formerly item number 8, is consideration and approval of allocating available Glenwood HRP grant funds for improvements to the A.D. Harris facility. As background information, the city of Panama City was awarded $4,420,697.95 in CDBG DR funds for the Hometown Revitalization Program, or HRP, Glenwood Facade Project. Of this amount, mentioned above, approximately $757,277.80 remains unallocated. The A.D. Harris facility has been identified as a potential site for using these remaining funds to make improvements that are both necessary and that will benefit the community. The program team at Florida Commerce has approved the A.D. Harris facility for participation in the HRP program. Initial discussions have begun, and staff now seeks to move forward by requesting the City Commission or the CRA Board to issue a task order to start the Environmental Review Record, ERR, process, ensuring eligibility and approval for the A.D. Harris facility to receive this funding. Staff recommends approval of allocating the available Glenwood HRP funds not to exceed $757,277.80 for improvements to the A.D. Harris facility. Board members?
Okay, so for downtown, you had to apply for this hometown, the facade. This is the same money, right? Yeah, okay. So we didn't have enough businesses in Glenwood. Is that what, or is this money left over from the whole project? Yes.
Can I
go ahead.
ask Nathan Beam to come up?
Please.
He is helping from Haggerty. He has been tasked with assisting us on the HRP
Okay, wonderful.
program.
Yes,
Yep.
please.
I think as a consultant hired by the city, it's appropriate for Nathan to come address this. Please, sir. Thank you. You can just give your name, title, and company for the record. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Nathan Beam. I'm a consultant with Haggerty, here to help the city on the HRP program, Hometown Revitalization Program. So the award amount, as discussed earlier, was for Glenwood specifically. The city initially applied for 4 grants, so we're speaking on one of those. The allocations were based on a formula discussed with previous city management. Came up and it was in summary based off the calculations of the square footage per eligible business.
Yes.
Divided into kind of the total project square footage. So each building received a proportionate amount of funding. Back when the calculations were being done, so I guess speaking to the outreach component initially, I personally walked up and down MLK and Highway 77 3 times. knocked on every door, talked to anybody who would listen. We actually held a public meeting in the A.D. Harris facility. That was one of 5 public meetings to get the word out. So it was a considerable amount of outreach. We did hold another round of applications for the unallocated funds for the Glenwood area, as well as all of the grant programs. So the term unallocated stems from the way there were some decisions still being made through the grant program, how it would be administered, specifically with design. So at the time the award calculations were made, that funding was still separated for anticipated design costs. And when the city continued to develop the program and made other decisions, that's why essentially there are what we're calling unallocated funding. So that we've moved those funds from the design, which were overestimated based off the way that the program is being administered currently, and that's where the unallocated funds have come from. And we have again just spent some time in the Glenwood area again during that second application cycle. There was not any businesses that we got applications for, went through the eligibility process. All of the participation that we have, we've ran through the state many times.
So with that said, this is money allocated for Glenwood, and we did do all the appropriate, sounds like you did more than appropriate outreach there. And so is this money that, I mean, we get after we spend like the money to do it, and then we get the allocated funds
Correct.
back? Okay. And then is there a sunset on this grant money? If it's not used by a certain time, do we just have to give it back? I mean, we just don't get it.
That's correct. September 2025 is the expiration of funding, and that deadline is set by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The city has been in communication with the state discussing potential for extensions. The state is unable to offer or approve an extension pending HUD's decision, which as of right now, there is no formal discussion between the state and HUD on that.
So in your opinion, this is the only eligible project for the allocated funds, otherwise not spent at all?
Through my discussions with city staff, this has emerged as the best candidate so that, in other words, use or lose money is not lost.
Yes, that's what, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And so when presented with this list of HRP businesses last year, I looked at the businesses, and they were pretty much on the perimeter and not in the heart of Glenwood. The A.D. Harris facility is in the heart of Glenwood, and has for many years, the community has said, we want a better center there. We want a learning village. And as has come forth after Hurricane Michael, a resilience hub and center. So these monies can help to retrofit that facility. It is a facade grant, so we can bring it up to speed. There are some specific repairs, and I know we've talked with you about that, Nathan, as well as our CRA staff. And if you'd like to speak to what we're moving forward as the kinds of things we would like to have done there to make this a less costly building to maintain.
Yes, ma'am. The grant is limited in scope, so the activities under consideration are limited to what can largely be defined as what's visible from the right-of-way. With few exceptions, HVAC and roofing are eligible activities under the grant, but by and large, this is a beautification or facade improvement project to increase or stimulate economic activity in the area. So the discussions that have occurred to this point have focused on what the economic benefit would be in the Glenwood area, how these activities would tie into such.
And as a center that is to be used for economic development, it is important that it not be as costly as it has been to maintain, and that it is a place that, as we move forward with the vision of it becoming a community center, that these funds be applied to make that happen. And there's nothing in what is being proposed to Ms. Brenda Lewis Williams' concern that would preclude or prevent it from being deemed a historic place on the National Historic Register. It is to repair the building.
Yeah, and maybe to be a little more specific, and I'm just going off memory, but the scope of work allowable under the grant is limited to paint, lighting, concrete work, exterior electrical repairs, or additions as needed. If, for example, if lighting or security lighting was wanted to be put in, run the electrical for that. Roofing repairs, HVAC, gutters, limited facade redesign, but that was mostly applicable to the businesses that were involved in the program. And I think that's the general scope of the grant. So to your statement, there is no alterations or invasive type of activity that's inclusive.
Thank you.
On a side note, Nathan, I just want to tell you, I get a lot of compliments about you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so whatever you're doing, I mean, people go out of the way to tell me that they've really appreciated working with you. And I know this has nothing to do with this, but I don't think I've ever really had an opportunity to talk to you, see you face to face, and I just want to tell you that.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Affirmation is always appreciated. Good work, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Is there consideration of a motion to approve this item as before the board today?
Yes, I move approval of the allocating the available Glenwood HRP funds to the A.D. Harris facility.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve allocating available Glenwood HRP funds not to exceed $757,277.80 for improvements to the A.D. Harris facility. Is there further deliberation from the board? Seeing none, Ms. Sageward, please call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Halagus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, item number 11, formerly number 10, is consideration and approval of the CRA regular meeting schedule for calendar year 2025. As background information, in January of 2024, the CRA board voted to adjust the schedule for its regular meetings, moving them to the third Tuesday of each month at City Hall, Room 10. In accordance with Florida Statute 189.015, staff submits the proposed public notice of the CRA board's regularly scheduled meetings for the 2025 calendar year to be published upon approval. Staff recommends approval of the 2025 CRA regular meeting schedule as enclosed in your packet today. Is there a motion to approve?
A motion we modify
Okay.
to 5 p.m.
So what now?
Motion we modify it to 5 p.m.
We lost 2 members at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
Well, that's tonight. You may not have a member at 4 p.m. on some of these weeks with me.
Oh, there's that.
Yeah.
I like you up here, so for the most part, we think a lot alike, so.
All right, so there's a motion to approve the schedule with a modification that meetings begin at 5 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that for Brian. He's like,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
once a month.
I know. It's
All right, Ms. Sagehorn, call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
yes.
Board Member Halagus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right,
Thank you all.
we'll entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
Y'all.
There's a motion on the floor to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Sagehorn, call the roll.
Board Member Granger?
Yes.
Board Member Halagus?
Yes.
Board Member Lucas?
Yes.
Motion passes. Adjournment at 6:52.
Motion, meeting adjourned.
Giving me the